Hey, everybody, I'm Jason Treuting. I am your host of this podcast series. So does it's called Brooklyn Bound Podcast. And we talk to wonderful artists before they play on this series. And we have a big Brooklyn Bound show coming up. It's a percussion marathon. It's at Roulette on February 5th. And we'll be joined by Colleen Bernstein. Oh my goodness, we talked about this, Colleen.
That's
Oh my
hilarious.
goodness, that's so great. I have never
Love
pronounced
it.
your last name that way. And having talked about it, let me
Mhm.
try it again, like pre-roll, re-roll. We're now joined by Colleen Bernstein.
There you go.
I'm never going to make it professionally in this world, Colleen.
I mean, you haven't already? I think you
Well, in
have.
the podcasting, yeah. In the percussion world, maybe, but in the podcasting world, I'm about to get fired. This is great. Colleen, I was thinking about it. I have Zoomed with you many, many times over the last
Yeah.
2 years, which has been wonderful. It's like, some of the friends that you meet during a pandemic, we've never met in person, and February 5th is going to be that moment.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
February 4th, I think we're going to get together, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's very weird. I've been like very grateful to know you and like get to talk to you over the pandemic, but
absolutely.
it's just like yeah, I think you told me I was a 2D friend at some point.
Right? Yeah.
So, yeah. So
We're gonna bring
I'll
it to 3D
we'll go to
space.
the next 3D.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Colleen is a fearless leader of many things, but you have been our fearless leader. We serve on the Percussion DA Diversity Alliance subcommittee together with some wonderful
Mhm.
people, Puck and Mika. Um,
Yeah.
and I think all of us haven't all met in real life yet, so it's
Mhm.
coming.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
someday. Well, who
I
knows
told you.
when, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's put it on the calendar. Let's make a party.
right.
Puck lives
Yeah.
in Texas, makes it harder.
Yeah.
Makes it harder. Yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit harder. Um, well, I before we met, I've known about you and known about your work, and partly because of the solo we're going to start to talk about in a moment, what you're playing
Mhm.
on this marathon at Roulette. But let's go back. I told you I kind of in these conversations go through the same sort of list of questions, and the first question is just like a silly question to ask in an interview. It's just so broad. But I don't know your backstory so much in terms of like, when you started to play percussion, when you became excited about music, how you kind of made your path to where you are now. So
Mhm.
what's little Colleen gets excited about music, gets excited about drums. What's the story?
Yeah. Um, well, I'll not like tell the whole thing because it would
Nope.
take a long time, but
Whole thing.
I I started music like playing piano. That was my first thing. And I was really little. I have an older brother, and my parents put him into some kind of piano class thing when he was pretty young, and I was just like obsessed with everything that he liked, and I just did everything that he did. So as soon as he started doing that, I would just like go to the piano that we had in the house or the keyboard and just like smack away on it like as a little toddler.
Yeah.
Um, and so I
How much
like
older is how
eventually,
much older is your brother? Is this
he's 3 years older.
yeah, so close
So
enough where
yeah.
you were really, yeah, doing everything
Yeah,
he's
I
doing.
mean, like, he like famously, whatever, like my first word was his name. Like he just,
Yeah.
when I was little, like that, my brother was like just completely everything. And, we're still very close, but
Yeah.
it's different now. We're adults. So anyway, um, uh, but anyway, yeah. So that's how I kind of like, I just really wanted to do piano because he was doing it. And I started with that group classes and, uh, like I think we did some kind of parent child music, general music kind of class thing. And, there was a lot of singing and ta ta ti ti ta and that kind of thing that I
Awesome.
remember from like a really long time ago. And then as far as like drums go, I was in like school band. My school started their band program conveniently when I was going into fourth grade, and that was like the first year that you could join it. Was you could start in fourth grade. So they of course can't play piano in school band, so I wanted to do something else because I loved music, and I had a bunch of friends who wanted to play the drums. And so I literally just for that was like, okay, cool. Like that sounds fun. I want to do that, and I want to do it with my friends. So that's really how I got started with playing drums and just
Awesome.
took off from there. My band director eventually was like, you really should audition for the Empire State Youth Orchestra, which was the regional youth orchestra program. It's pretty big in the area where I grew up in Albany. He was like, you should audition for that. You really should try it. And so eventually that got me connected to the teachers that I ended up studying with privately in high school. And I was in that program.
Is that the sorry for the Zoom cutoff thing,
Fine.
Colleen. Terrible. Was it Richard Al Bagley? Was that
Yeah.
the thing?
Yep.
It's so cool. I went to Eastman in my undergrad, and I started to, like, so many folks that were there had come up through this program and had just been like, I don't know, this is back in the whatever late 90s, or middle late 90s. Just like my high school had no percussion ensemble vibe or whatever. Like me and my friends tried to start one, but it wasn't a thing that you were doing. And then it felt like the Empire State thing and the Albany Richard Al Bagley thing. There was just so much percussion playing in high. That's so cool.
Yeah, Richard is, I don't know the words to really describe him and his impact, I think, on the field, because there's like, he's been doing that for more than 40 years at this point, doing this percussion ensemble program, and he teaches many of those students privately, and many of us have gone on to like be, Stefan Harris was his student, Duncan Patton. There's a lot of people, I can't even list them all, who have gone on and become professionals and like leaders in the field. And so that was just a very lucky thing for me to like grow up in that area and get connected with him. And I didn't really know what I was doing with percussion so much when I first auditioned. I had never taken a percussion lesson. I just had the group lessons at school. So, and most of that was pretty basic stuff for me, because it was like everybody else was beginners in music, but I had all these years of piano. So it was just like not that hard for me to kind of pick up the snare drum, bass drum stuff that we were doing. And I remember I went with my mom to see one of the percussion ensemble concerts, to like see if I wanted to audition to join this Empire State Youth Orchestra thing. They did a percussion ensemble thing. And we went, and the first piece on the program was this theatrical, like one of those percussion pieces where you're like, there's a lot of vocalizations of kind of gibberish, and you're like playing with books, and you're like knocking over music stands and running around the stage, and like, one of those pieces. And I'm forgetting right now who the composer was, but the idea of the piece was, it was about like the Babel, like the fall of the Temple of Babel or whatever, and like all the languages that, dispersed. And so it was very chaotic. It was like a very chaotic piece. And I just remember like watching that and looking at my mom and being like, I can't do that. Like, and my mom was like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, she's like, no, that's not for you. That you're not. But I was like intrigued by it, I was like, this is cool, but I can't do that. And so we went up to Richard like afterwards, and my mom introduced me to him and was like, like, this is Colleen, she's maybe interested in like doing this, she plays drums and piano. And he like jumped off of the stage and was like, let me get you the audition packet, like, let me get it, and he was helping them clean up, and he just abandoned all the kids and like took me down to like where his office was and gave me this packet of excerpts that they had you do for the audition, and was like, here, just like try, I don't know, just try it, just see what you know. And I was like, I don't know what this is. Like it was, some like standard excerpts, but then also some things that he kind of wrote for the auditions, like even the middle, like mini multi setup kind of thing. And it was like really, very different. And I just was like, okay, wait, what? And, he gave me like a few lessons before the audition that I think he just gave us for free, which was just so like typical of him and so generous and everything. And he just like clearly really wanted me to do it, even though he had no idea who I was or whatever. And so that's how I like auditioned, and I got into that group, and I did that all through high school. And I can't even, like I said, I can't describe, Richard is just an incredible guy. And like that first moment of like meeting him, it's like, so crazy. And
I love that. I feel like there's
totally changed my life. So
well, so many people have the story about it's like a person, and even my girls at their elementary school have their band director. It's like, I think I don't even know what his instrument is, but just he's like he takes time with them, he's funny, they love being there or whatever, and it's less and they're learning to love music at such a young age, and it always, like, it's a person oftentimes. It's so
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
But I've heard so many people tell that story about Richard, that he's been that person in such a generous and big way.
Yeah,
um
I mean, he would. I also studied with this guy named Mark Foster, who was the other conductor of the percussion ensemble. They kind of co-directed it,
mm,
and Mark is amazing as well. Like
mm,
I actually started lessons with Mark, and then later decided, okay, I'm more into this now. I want to like see where this goes, and I started taking lessons with both of them.
mm.
Um, but Mark is, fantastic too, and like together, the two of them have been doing this program for such a long time, and they really have it down. They've been able to, you know, it's an amazing program, and like some of my best friends in high school were part of that program, and it was really just an important thing for me. Um,
That's
so
amazing. So
yeah,
where
I
did you go
mean,
from there? That was high school.
mhm.
And so I guess I don't know for sure, but you went on to study music in college.
Yes, yeah, I went to Eastman for my undergrad.
Oh, you did too.
So yeah.
Wish we had like a
um,
fight song to sing or something, or a rah rah.
I know, right?
Yeah,
That's,
yeah. So
you
you were
know,
that person that I was like, I feel like I was kind of out of it in high school. I didn't know the whole scene, but like everybody I went to school with
yeah.
either was a Bagley thing or an Interlochen thing, and
Mhm.
learning about those. So that's awesome. That was you.
Yeah, I was like the reverse of most people though, because I had that, but my high school itself had no music program.
Got it. Right,
So
right,
I had like my high school music experience was like my piano lessons that I did for a while, and then eventually my senior year stopped doing private lessons so that I could really focus on percussion for the auditions and things. But it was all basically piano and then everything through this Empire State Youth Orchestra program. So, you know, without that, there's no way I would be doing what I'm doing now or any of that. So it was hugely, hugely important to me. But I ended up at Eastman, and I did a double degree. I did, performance degree and music education degree. Um, and yeah, I mean, I could talk a lot about Eastman, but it was a great place for me. I had a great time studying with Professor Burrett and, all the music ed faculty as well. Like it was an awesome time. I was learning so much all the time, and that, now I think when I was there, I felt like very much like it was just so intense, and it was very like I was doing a lot. I did a lot outside of the, what you needed to do as well. Like I started doing some extra concerts in the community and like creating my own things, and um so I was like taking on even more than I needed to, and I liked doing that. But I think when I was there, it was just kind of like you're just doing, going up, going up, going. And now I can look back on it and like really like think about how great of an experience it was. And uh so definitely really grateful for that.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah, I feel like I'm gonna take up the whole 30 minutes just
No,
telling
it's
the
good. I
answering
wanted
this
the whole
one
story.
question.
No, no, no. We got an hour, 30 minutes.
So,
It's cool. 3 hours. We're going. No.
uh
Um, when were you there? I have a feeling. So what I felt about Eastman and all of my schooling is like so much of it is about the people you meet and that kind of thing, and feeling like I still, you know, work and play with a lot of the people that I knew back
mhm.
then. Was that the case for you? Like, are you still, playing with or know some of those folks in that scene, or did that work for you that
Yeah,
way?
definitely. The one of the chamber groups that I play with, the American Wilds Ensemble,
Mm,
is the one that goes around national parks and plays in
awesome.
outdoor locations and stuff. That is all formed of Eastman people.
Mm,
So I was at Eastman with many of them, but they're all older than me. Some of them were in grad school when I was there. Some of them were there before me. Like, but we're all Eastman connected.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like where the group kind of started. Um, and then yeah, like I just played last month. I played with the Albany Symphony, and the horn player sitting right on the end of the horn section right next to me was a classmate of mine at Eastman. So it's just
Yeah, how
like
cool.
hadn't, we were good friends. She was in the music ed program too, and we hadn't seen each other in years, and then we got to do this gig together. So
Oh,
yeah,
fun. I want to know
it's
more about the American Wilds. That sounds so
oh yeah.
cool. We'll get back to that.
Okay.
We'll definitely get back to
Yeah.
that. So how did you get, without taking up the whole time? I'm asking these questions though. What was your road from Eastman to, you're in New York now? Yeah, you live in
Yes.
New York. So what
Mhm.
was that? Did you go straight from Eastman to New
No, so
York, or was there?
I ended up doing grad school. I went out to University of Michigan for
Yeah, I
grad
thought so.
school. Really wanted to go study with Joe Gramley. So I, I ended up out there, and did my master's. And yeah, basically to just like make it a shorter story, like after graduation, I kind of stayed in Michigan for a bit. I was thinking I was going to come straight to New York, and I actually had a plan in place. I had found a job. I was like ready to go in the summer, and I pretty quickly like had a change of plan. I was just like, you know what, I really want to not dive into New York quite yet. I had a lot of solo type things or like other projects I wanted to do. And I had a sense that if I came to New York, I would, I would want to get swept up in the freelancing thing, which is like what I wanted to do when I was here. But I felt like if I was doing that, I probably wouldn't be able to get some of these other ideas going. So I decided to just like, you know what, I'll move in like, I'll just delay it 6 months or, half a year or something. And I'll kind of stay in Michigan, freelance from there because I had some connections with regional orchestras and whatnot. So there was some potential for, freelance work there. And it was, I had, the ability to like have a bass and have a room with my instruments in it to practice. And, so I kind of just like changed my plan very quickly. And then it ended up that my timing of moving to the city was terrible because I moved right at the beginning of the pandemic. So
Like in January, was it like right before?
I moved, my lease ended in Michigan at the end of March of
Right.
2020. So it was like, if I had known there was a pandemic coming, I maybe would have done
Right.
something different. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's hard to say that. But
Sure.
I, of course, did not think
Yeah.
we'd be here. So I had an audition in the city at the beginning, like actually at the beginning of March, right when everybody was starting to say, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this COVID thing? And I like did the audition and then stayed a couple extra days to find an apartment. Did all my apartment hunting here, like put down a security deposit, and then got on a plane. And like the night that I got on the plane back to Michigan, they announced that they were locking down New York.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like, okay, but New York is so fast with the apartments. It's not like you find it months in advance. Like you move
Sure.
in like the next month. So I
Yeah.
had just like handed over the security deposit, like, okay, I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
then this all happened. So it was, and my lease in Michigan was going to expire. So it was just like, okay, well, here we go. So, um,
I feel I feel like everybody, I have my like, you move to New York and the city shows you who's who. Like there's
yeah,
always like New York, I feel like that always happens. But
yeah,
this is also an extremely like amplified version of that. I mean worldwide global version of that, but
yeah.
that's intense time to do that move.
Yeah, I think everybody has that like moment at the beginning of the pandemic of like the craziness of, so many of us, like we lost all of our gigs. And, like I'm certainly not the only person who had like a big bump in the road, there.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but that it was just like the timing of it couldn't, really, it all just like crash landed right there.
Remarkable.
So,
Well, there's some,
um,
I think I knew this. I think I knew these things, Colleen, but I'm just putting them together, the Eastman and Michigan. I know from just what we do at SOCI, I feel like just continually, like if somebody comes from Michigan, it feels like they're going to be an interesting player. Like it feels like, and now, I know it's changed from when Joe was there, Doug's
mhm,
there now, which is, very cool to have
yeah.
a buddy teaching out there. But like Joe, I know him. I don't know him super, super well, but I know him well enough to be like that. That felt like a pretty cool, some cool leadership. Because you also, it's one of those schools I think where you don't just feel like you're gonna get people that just sound like Joe or sound like the teachers or like
Hmm.
that it doesn't.
Hmm.
I don't feel like there's necessarily like a overt Michigan sound, and as much as it's like, oh, somebody's gonna be really interesting and have individual thoughts, have doing interesting things, playing at a level where their craft is at the level where they can say what they want to say, and like it feels like there's so many good things to say about
Hmm.
that program. It's very
Yeah.
cool, very, very
Yeah,
cool.
I definitely feel like there were pockets of the studio that were like more interested in orchestral percussion. There were pockets that were like really into, improv and like free kind of, composer, melody performer types of things. And, it was like a big mix of, there were definitely people who wanted to just do more kind of musical theater or like commercial music, sorts of things. And Yeah, so it definitely, there wasn't like there was one thing that the studio was good at. So yeah,
Yeah, very cool. Very, very
yeah,
cool. So
yeah. I
I
learned a lot from
definitely
Joe.
want
So
to get us to what
yeah,
the project that you're playing on Roulette, but just
yeah.
a small, to frame just a larger thing a bit more, like we're going to talk about some solo work that you're doing, a consortium or a commission you made
Hmm. Yeah.
happen with Yvette Jackson. But just in your musical life, I know you do many things. I'll see, I know I follow what International Contemporary Ensemble is doing, and I know I've seen you popping up doing work there, and I know you teach, and I've seen some other cool solo things you're doing. What's up in your world right now, or what's just a kind of broader sense of like what you're up to musically?
Yeah, a lot of teaching right now.
Mm.
That's again is the case for like many of us, I think.
Yeah.
But it's, I feel very grateful that I got my education degree from Eastman and I was able to get my certification and like, all of that, because I wasn't anticipating that I would end up teaching full time in a school like at this point in my career, but it was something that when everything happened with COVID, it was kind of like, okay, you should do it, you should do that.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up like teaching full time now. So I teach like elementary band actually, is the main part of my job, but I teach the middle school lessons and I assist with the middle school band and the high school band as well. So I'm in a school that's like a K-12 program,
Nice.
and I pretty much work with like all the kids who are in
Yeah.
the instrumental program, but I do the most with the younger kids.
Mhm.
So that's like that's my everyday thing, and learning a lot from that.
Yeah.
It's fun. But that's, it's been very interesting to like start that right now with the pandemic and everything. When COVID hit, they haven't had the beginning band program since COVID, because they lost their teacher who was in my position.
Okay.
And it was kind of like last year with the hybrid remote, like this and that. It was like, we're not gonna start kids we normally would. We're not gonna do it this year. So then they brought me in, and I'm kind of doing it with the younger kids for the first time. So
Awesome.
yeah. So but
Yeah.
it's a lot of
And it's
fun.
funny, I can imagine that making a lot of sense, pandemic wise, being, oh my gosh, I lost so much of my freelance work. But also I feel like that's also a really natural story for folks who move to New York. I know
Mhm.
the teaching I did, it was like I did some K, no, not K, like maybe third to sixth graders was my first gig, was like a kind of like an after school music program. But those
Mhm.
things are just like, they're, for me, it was like fun gigs where I was learning a lot, but also just allowed me to move to the city and allowed me to be, so I feel like it's all at once a pandemic story and just a like, right, I forgot you just moved to the city. Like,
Yeah.
making your way in that world. But I love that we were talking so much about Al Bagley, and I was
Hmm.
mentioning Mr. Kramer at our school. Like you're that person for so many
Yeah.
people every day. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I try to like remember that every now
Yeah.
and then. Like,
Yeah.
I could like I have a student who, normally it would be that the fourth graders would be beginning and the fifth graders would have had a year of, playing already, and I would have both of them. But this year it's both grades are just total beginners. Um,
Right.
so it's just a little different. But I have a fifth grade student right now who's like completely just taken off with the saxophone and completely loves it, and is like, this is a fifth grader who's been playing for, I don't know, 3 months at this point, 2 months,
Yeah.
4 months, whatever. He came in the other day and he goes, "What's circular breathing?" And I'm like,
Yes,
"What?"
that's a win.
He's like,
Yeah.
and what is it? And are you going to be teaching me that?"
Yeah. I
I was
love
like,
that. I mean,
no,
yeah.
I'm not. No.
No, but let's figure
But
it out. You should go
yeah.
figure that. That's
He's like,
amazing.
"Can I try it?" I'm like, "No, like, I don't want you to pass out." Um,
Don't want you to
but
pass out. Yeah.
no, but he's like, it's really fun to like,
Yeah.
he comes in with all these questions all the time, and he wants to learn all these different, tunes, and he's like teaching himself new notes and stuff. So it's really fun when you have students like that, and it's also really fun when you have students who are like struggling to play the first three notes like consistently,
Mhm.
which I also have. But then, right about now, I'm noticing like, okay,
Mm.
their chops are coming in, like they're brass players, and like they're okay, they're starting to get it, like, and they're starting to be able to hear more you know, to hear like, oh, I'm on the wrong partial, or, you know, I'm actually hitting the pitch. And so like if it's like this tiny little victory, or like this kid who's just completely off to the races, like
Yeah,
it's really fun to like just think about where that might, you know, what that might mean for them, you know.
totally.
And yeah, so I do that. And then I started in this fall, I started teaching lessons at Hunter College, which I I know that you had a connection there,
I did. I
right?
taught there for, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I taught there for
you
a
were
second too. Suzanne
okay.
Farron is like my favorite person. Like
Okay,
she's
yeah,
kind of amazing.
yeah,
We've been friends since grad school. Some of the like, first composers' music I've played. Like, I don't know. She's just like so amazing. I don't know if
yeah.
you've got to run into her as much.
Well, if you put
Um,
in a good word for me, then
yeah,
thank you. I
all the
I think,
time.
yeah, I really appreciate that. So I started doing that this fall, and that was via Zoom for last semester, but I think I'm going to be able to actually go on campus this semester, so um, that will be awesome. And you're just thinking about other things I'm doing, like the what I was doing earlier today was I'm starting just next weekend actually, um, kind of directing the percussion ensemble stuff actually for the New Jersey Youth Symphony,
Oh, cool.
which is just I think going to be, at least as of now, it's an interim position just for the end of the year,
Mm,
through the end of the school year. But I don't know, it potentially could be a longer term thing.
mm.
But that's another program like the one that I had in Albany that
Yeah,
is a youth orchestra, but also has, you know, percussion ensemble separately. So I'm going to be running that and leading those
amazing,
percussion
Colleen.
kids. So
That's
yeah,
so
so
cool.
yeah, today was
Yeah,
like my first day going out there, and next week is my first rehearsal with them. But I like went out to, you know, meet the kids and see the space and all of that
where
stuff.
is
So
it new? Is it Newark where the New Jersey Symphony is too, or is it
it's
where is it?
the facility was in New Providence.
Okay,
Yeah, and
cool.
yeah, it's part of like the Wharton Arts umbrella, which I
Okay.
know has they have a El Sistema program in Patterson, and then uh, I forget what it's called. There's some kind of, it's like a community music school, I think,
Mm,
and then they have the Youth Symphony, which is very large. There's three orchestras underneath of it,
mm.
and there's the jazz ensemble, there's wind, like there's all this, you know, stuff, and percussion
Yeah,
program is part of it. So so I'm getting to come in and like do that. So
that's
it's
so
like
cool.
it's like a little mini Richard thing, and
Yeah.
you know, it's
Well,
like
it's mini,
very,
but it's
yeah, no,
really
it's
huge
very
stuff.
very exciting. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of teaching, you know, of all those three things right now, but it's great.
That's so cool. Well,
Playing whenever I
definitely
can,
let me
you know.
know
Yeah.
when when the percussion ensemble, if a
Yeah.
percussion ensemble show comes together, the New Jersey Youth Symphony, that'd be amazing to see.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, cool. I think mutual friend Ross Carr, I think was the first person to tell me about this Yvette Jackson solo, because I think
Hmm.
maybe you played it maybe on a international contemporary ensemble show somehow, or
Hmm. Yeah.
I forget what all the dots were.
Yep.
But it's been cool to follow it come together and to check out the piece, and I'm so happy that it's happening on this show.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the piece and how it happened?
Sure. Yeah. The piece is it's called Deliberate Afraid of Nothing. It's by Yvette Jackson. And I led a consortium commission. I met Yvette in 2019 in the summer I was doing the Ensemble Evolution program up at Banff. And that's where I really connected with Ross, actually,
Awesome. Yeah.
because that's run by International Contemporary Ensemble and Steve Schick. And so I was there for the full 3 week program, and Yvette came in towards the end as one of the guests, and, you know, as a composer whose music was going to be performed. And I ended up on the piece that we did. It was like a mixed chamber piece that she wrote, and she gave a couple talks about her work and her, you know, art making and all of that. And so just through that, I was really interested in her work and thought it was just really cool. I felt like her voice was really different. And so I connected with her in the fall and asked if she'd be interested in writing something for percussion. She's never written a percussion solo before, so it was like a totally new thing. Um, and, you know, we kind of kicked around a few ideas. And I asked her specifically if she would write something for this project that I've kind of been developing over the last couple of years, that has to do with gender equality and, you know, themes of feminism and intersectionality and things like that. And I, you know, asked it very broadly, like, would you want to write something that somehow relates to this topic? I don't really care how, you know, I didn't want to like obviously tell a composer what to be inspired by, you know, but whether it was, you know, something from her own experience or something otherwise, she ended up taking inspiration from Audre Lorde, and that's where the title comes from. It's from a piece of writing by Audre Lorde. So yeah, and we kicked around different ideas for instruments. Yvette does a lot with electronics in sound design and things like that. So I knew I was hoping that she would put an electronics component into the piece. And I basically sent her a list of the instruments that I own and was like, you could write for any of these, you know, I could play it. And she decided she was interested in the drum set, but it sort of ended up being like a modified kind of drum set thing. So there's a kick drum and 2 toms, but the cymbal is like small, like a splash cymbal. And then it's a wood block instead of what I guess would normally be a snare drum. So it's kind of like a modified drum set. But you know, I play it sitting down in a drum set configuration. And yeah, that's the piece. It has some electronics, kind of some pitched material in the electronics, but a lot of more ambient and sound effects kind of things. And it's a very, I think when you hear like I'm doing a drum set electronics piece, I think maybe that conjures up like a certain kind of piece or a sound, at least for me. Like, you know, I thought, okay, there's going to be a lot of grooves, it's going to be big and, you know, like choppy and like fun to, you know, and it's really not. It's like totally different than that, which, you know, initially, like when I got the piece, to be honest, like I was surprised. I was like, oh, okay, that's not, I didn't think that was going to be. And I think that's great. Like it's really grown on me, and not that I didn't like it ever. I've always thought it was cool, but it's like the more I've done it and the more I've sat with it, I really am like, oh, this is cool. And this is very different in our repertoire. So I think it's, I think it's like extra special because of that. So yeah.
I think I've heard I forget if the video you can find on YouTube. I don't know if that video was for a specific show during the pandemic. I forget what it was, but that's the one I've seen. And it does feel like it's, I mean, electronics are really striking and it's spacious. It feels like it's spacious in a way that's really, maybe not what you'd expect when you see those instruments in that, in a really lovely way.
I got to play it once before COVID because it was finished in January of 2020. So I commissioned it at the end of 2019, and then it was finished in January of 2020. And I played it like once in February at one of my last concerts before COVID hit. And so I've performed it a couple times or recorded it a couple times in COVID. And it's interesting because the beginning and the end of the piece are supposed to be, it like specifically says in the music, it's supposed to be a breathing meditation. And so it's supposed to be that the performer is like literally breathing in kind of somewhat of a specific way. And then there's a lot of like long drum rolls and kind of like just big long sounds that either go from soft to loud or the other way around, or like there's a lot of big shapes and stuff, but it's all supposed to be in this kind of rhythm of a breathing meditation. I'm actually looking at the music right now, and it says like, it begins and ends with a meditation to center the performer and by extension, the audience. And I found that like, if I perform it with a mask on, it's a very different kind of experience because I don't know if people can tell that I'm doing that, you know, like you have to try to communicate that. And I think you can in a way, but it's like, it's just been an interesting kind of thought that I've really only been able to play it in that kind of context.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Well, I feel like it's probably knowing that I'm excited to hear it at Roulette, knowing that, because I feel like anytime I've been going back to breath so much right now, right? Like we all, I mean, for obvious reasons, but just like any kind of centering, breath based mindfulness feels so good right now and so necessary. And in concerts, that's the space to go for me. That's a great way to hear music. And so knowing that the beginning and end of the piece are kind of about that is really, it's very, very cool. I guess maybe that begs the question, how is the middle not like that? Or what does Yvette?
Yeah, the middle, that's where you kind of get more of the groove. But it's much more subtle than some other pieces in the repertoire that use the same kind of instrumentation. It's like, I think the idea of the title, like deliberate, I get the sense in the middle of the piece that it's like this kind of long development, and it kind of just starts with like quarter notes in the bass drum, and then it kind of layers in different things, and it ends up being pretty dense as far as like counterpoint between all the instruments and stuff. But it's a slow tempo, so it just has this sense of like very steady, this like kind of steady groove that has a lot going on in it. And it kind of just like, it's like a big wave. It comes in and then it kind of goes back out into the breath again. So I think the piece is really just beautiful, and it's like, it's so unique. So I'm really excited about it, and I'm happy that I've had like so many chances to play it on various concerts, and not just on things that I'm putting on myself. I mean, that's great too, but it's nice to be able to like come and play it at various, events and stuff. So yeah, I hope that people enjoy it, and I hope it gets played more too. Like when people start coming out and playing more, I hope that people will come out and play it.
Yeah, I would love to check it out actually. From I have more and more students now who are interested in playing solo drum set pieces, and it's like, I feel like more choices will be nice to throw their way. So I'll want to check that out and see where to purchase it, where to go to.
You'd have to, I think, talk to Yvette directly about that. But I mean, it's a cool piece, and it requires like a really different skill set than I think what we all kind of instinctively, like when you sit down behind a drum set, you think, I'm using these skills, and it's like, well, kind of, but it's also like I'm trying to think about like my timpani rolls, during the breathing part, with these like big, rolls that I'm trying to play on a small little tom, but I'm really trying to think about like that sound, so it's I'm still like learning a lot from the piece.
The splash cymbal is so striking too, because you imagine,
it
felt like, I didn't know what the instrumentation was, but it felt so specifically chosen, because you could imagine instinctively going to some other sound, but something about trying to get that sound out of a small, I don't know, there was something really striking about it.
Like actually the very end of the piece is like a long cymbal roll, and it kind of just vanishes, and if I time it correctly with the electronics, then the electronics kind of fade off a little bit after the cymbal. But it's because there's no click track or anything, so it's but it's like, it's very hard to do a long cymbal roll with a big crescendo on a splash cymbal. Like it's with like big fat mallets that I was just doing a timpani style roll. It's like very hard to do that, but it's cool. It's like, it really makes you hone in on that, and in a way I think that's like kind of the idea of the piece, is like, it's a very deep, focused, reflective kind of thing. And so I think it's a really effective and great piece. I'm just excited to play it. So thank you for bringing it on your show. It's awesome.
Totally. No, it's gonna sound amazing at Roulette. I think the instruments and the electronics will too. Well, always on these podcasts, Colleen, I always have two questions that we kind of get to at the end after this moment, and I'd love to know more about this. Every time I've talked to anybody leading up to this show, it's like there's so many more conversations to have. So we will have more conversations about Yvette's work. But thinking about this, I feel like we've had some conversations about this, but you mentioning, maybe premiering this piece right before the pandemic, and then, talking about moving to New York during the pandemic. These podcasts kind of moved to Zoom during the pandemic, right? Like before it was all just like audio. It's like, this is the world right now. And I would always find myself asking, and interested in how the pandemic kind of changed the artist's process, maybe, because I for myself, I was really like almost daily, I think, questioning what it is that I was doing and why I was doing it, and what does it mean to do it at this time, right? And then I feel like we build 2 years from that moment, and it was like end of May, George Floyd's death, murder, large conversations in our scene and questioning of our scene in terms of equity and inequities and racism and anti-racism in the scene. And
Yeah.
then I think we can just keep adding on to that, crazy, the election moment and the feeling around discourse in our society and
Yeah.
whatever, insurrection. I mean, like there's no,
I know. Like we
we
were
can
just
just keep
reminiscing
talking,
on
right? We can
that,
just,
which is
yeah,
weird to, I don't
totally.
know if reminiscing is the right word, but we were just talking about how we met like
Yeah,
the day after the
totally.
insurrection on Zoom, and then here we are a year later, and it's like
Yeah, doing it
everything's
again.
still like spinning, like it's all, yeah,
Totally.
totally.
And I feel like, I mean, this is too big a question to actually answer, but any portion of it, like, I feel like all of us have been forced in a good way to, think about our practice. Um, Maybe in terms of and how can I do that right now, or should I be thinking about that right now, or what is that, what is my role in society that way, and then in bigger ways thinking about the way our scene works systemically. What have some of your reflections been on that, or have you felt like your practice has changed as a result of any of this, the past year, or are there things that have been a part of your practice that have felt grounding that you've kind of doubled down on? How has that worked for you?
Yeah, that is definitely a large question.
It is, I know. No,
But it's a
take
good
a
one.
sliver.
It's a good question. I think, yeah, I think I've maybe started to feel more like interest, or not, well, not interest, but more maybe permission to like really just play music that I like playing. Um, like I think a lot of the time we especially when we're in school, like, and it's a good thing in school to play things that are, that maybe challenge you in a way, or
Sure.
that maybe aren't something you would play like in your chosen career path, or you know what I mean, like that's a good
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and you have to do that in order to know what it is that you actually do like.
Mm,
But so it's not like I'm never doing stuff that I don't like anymore, but just like saying to myself like, no, I can um really explore what it is that I do like even
mm,
more, and know that like that's okay to like have something that's more like your voice and less like you're a really good player and you can play, all these things. That's awesome, but like trying to, I think about like what I would want my like voice to be, or like what it is at its core. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but like thinking about
mhm.
like the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
core of like, I mean, you asked at the beginning about like my musical background, and where it all kind of came from, and I think I've done a little bit more reflecting on that, and like how I actually want that to translate to what I'm actually playing and what I'm doing, versus
Mhm,
just kind of being this thing, and then not deliberately chasing those feelings as much.
mhm.
Like I found I was going through old stuff in my parents' house a couple of years ago, and I found like a journal from second grade or something that I think we had
Awesome.
like, yeah, it was very fun to read. But I think it was one of those like the beginning of the school day, there was like a prompt, like some kind of writing prompt, and you had to write a few sentences in your journal every day or something like that.
Hmm.
And I found just a page in there, and there were no prompts in it because I only wrote the answers. So it's kind of fun to like try to figure out what the question
What
was.
they were.
But there, I found an entry that like basically said something like, when like that said like, I know that like I want to be a musician, and I don't have the memory of like thinking that I knew that at that age. Like
Mhm.
if you'd asked me, if without looking at that, like when I decided that I wanted to do music, I would have said like late high school.
Right.
But I like found this entry that was like basically like, music is like that's like my place, that's like my thing, and I love it, and it's like
That's awesome.
important, and I like
Yeah.
want to do that. And so I'm trying to think about that, and like think about the things that have um, meant like so much to me in that development, and that
Mm,
like those little touchstones that I've tried to kind of chase along the way,
mm,
whether that's like working with Richard and some of those experiences, like really reflecting on the most meaningful things that I learned from him,
mm,
or from Professor Britt, or like whoever it might be, and then thinking like, I want to do more of that stuff,
mhm.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know, it might be it's not going to be the same repertoire or whatever. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying like I really want to hone in on that, because I think that would be probably the most authentic like
Yeah.
musical thing that I could do. And so I think I've just been thinking about that like authenticity kind of thing.
That makes a lot of sense. I think
You know,
there's so much. I think this is maybe partly what you were saying, I think, or at least I grabbed onto, is like, as a student, so often we're like, we look at our deficiencies and we're taught to like kind of bring up our deficiencies or something. But I've been really refreshed being around the composition department at Princeton. They talk so much about running to your strengths. It's like, okay, maybe, you know, maybe harmony's not your thing, so go somewhere else, you know, or maybe like, you know, like, what do you do? What is authentically you?
yeah,
And I don't think that's meant to say, don't expand your horizons and learn about more things and broaden what your worldview is in any way. But I do like that idea that eventually, like, channeling what it is that, what is your voice and how to do more of that makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah.
Um,
Because it's less
yeah,
about, to me, it's not about like one instrument versus another, or like, oh, technically I'm good at this, but I'm not good at that. Like, I think if there was something I wanted to play on an instrument that I'm not that good at, and I had the time to like really work on it, that, you know, it's not like I would shy away from that. It's
sure.
more, it's like, what is the like the thing that I'm trying to say, and like
Mm,
you know, in a broader way. It's not just what instrument is it or this or that. Like trying to, yeah, I'm trying to kind of really zero in on that, and like, yeah, just think about like the music I like to listen to, and how, you know, how does that connect to or not connect to the things that I'm playing. Because a
yeah,
lot of the time that happens to a lot of us. We go to music school and then you kind of stop listening to music sometimes, you know,
yeah,
or like you
yeah.
end up like only playing music that really has nothing to do with the music that you listen to otherwise. And
Yep.
you know, that's okay. But like trying to think about what is it that I like about that, or why, or how can I do that and provide that kind of feeling for people. um, so yeah, those are kind of the big questions that I've been, you know,
Yeah.
pondering, but also mostly just feeling like so grateful for any time I get to go play, like, because
Yeah.
it's so rare.
Yeah.
And you know, I just feel really lucky to have any chances to do that. So
Yeah. I do want to hold on
yeah,
to that, right? It feels like any concert right now is really special, just because we can all be together and share again, and
yeah,
not getting jaded by that. I want to not ever get jaded by that again. You know what I mean? Like, let's hold on
yeah,
to that. Let's hold on to
yeah.
that.
Yeah, like
Um,
I played when I think I mentioned I just played with the Albany Symphony, and you
yeah.
know, I grew up in Albany, so that was the orchestra that I grew up listening to and going to their concerts, and it's the same conductor is still there. And
Awesome.
so you know, like when I was a little kid, um, he was like, you know, they used to do these like kind of kids concerts, where the conductor is David Allen Miller. And he used to like do these concerts that were themed, you know, to various things. And so there were concerts where he was like Cowboy Dave, you know, and he would come out and it would be all this like, you know, American West kind of Copeland music
Yeah.
and such. And you
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
he would say like, I'm Cowboy Dave and this and that. And like I remember those concerts to some extent,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that. Like I remember Cowboy Dave, you know.
Right.
And
How can you not?
now, but like, you know, now like Albany Symphony has like won Grammys in the last few years, and like, you know, and he's fantastic. And so I getting like I went got to play and work with him, and that
That's
was like
awesome.
really, yeah, it was awesome. And I think just like taking a moment to think about that, you know, was something
Yeah.
that, not that I wouldn't have done it previously, but it was like extra meaningful, and
Hmm.
this like good moment to just remember like I've heard this group for many years in this venue, but I have not played in the venue. I haven't played with the group. You know, we rehearsed and recorded it at a venue that I had played many times with the Empire State Youth Orchestra. So it was like I haven't played there in a long time, but like the whole backstage area looks exactly the same as it did when I was in high school. And it was like coming back to that was like, you know, it felt, if there was a lot, it felt there were a lot of feelings about it. It's like
What are the places?
exciting, and you
Isn't the
know,
egg? Is the
Yeah,
egg,
the egg
is
is one of,
Albany is
yeah.
the egg?
Yeah, the symphony usually plays at the Palace Theater, which is kind
Nice.
of
Okay.
downtown. And
Cool,
so
cool,
like
cool.
gone there a gazillion times.
Yeah.
But I hadn't played there, and the Troy Music Hall is the other
Nice.
venue.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the one that I know like really well because I spent so much time there in high school with the
Yeah.
youth orchestra, doing concerts and just like getting there super early because of the schleps and whatever, and like just hanging out with my friends there. And so it was like, I just thinking about like those moments and how much that formed me, and what I
That's very
can
cool.
what I can do with that.
Yeah.
So
We had a chance to play the Troy, it's the Troy Savings Bank Music Hall, right? Is that what
yeah,
it's called or
yeah,
something? It's and it sounds so beautiful. And it's
yeah.
when I was a student at Eastman, I would somehow a lot of the cool jazz stuff that would come through New York City would make it up there,
Mhm.
but wouldn't come all the way up to Rochester. So we would drive down and then end up driving back in the middle of the night. But I saw like, Wayne Shorter play there and Herbie Hancock play there, like all these kind of like big
Yeah,
names that I had never seen before. It was like a really striking, awesome place to see that music.
yeah,
It's almost like you've answered the last question, but if you have another question, or the last question I always ask, if you have
yeah,
another answer for it, is kind of like these pre-pandemic wonderful memories of sharing music with other people, like, and I always say that, those memories kind of are, or those stories for sure are always like helpful in our touring, like you're whatever, you're driving all night and you're kind of pissed about this, but then you start sharing the stories of like, oh, remember when this happened, or this really exciting, show we got to play, or whatever it was. So I've been thinking about those more and more now that we're not playing so many shows, or at least not as many as we were. It sounds like Cowboy Dave, and it sounds like Troy Savings Bank. Like you've given a couple good ones of those, or even the Al Bagley, but
yeah.
is there some fun or particularly amazing memory you have of a live show pre March of 2019?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of moments, and I feel like just really lucky to have those. Um, but I mentioned earlier by my chamber group, the American Wilds Ensemble. So like just to quickly kind of give a background of that, it's a group that formed in 2016 when it was the centennial of the National Park Service. And the idea was like to commission a body of works that were in celebration of the centennial. So some of the pieces are like about specific places in national parks, and some of them are more like kind of about the concept of conservation, or like the man versus nature kind of story. And like, it's we ended up with 11 pieces in this big commissioning project that the
Awesome.
ensemble did. And so like that was like the first thing we did as a group, and we went out and played like across the country, literally in parks. And like we played inside of Mammoth Cave, and we played up at the top of Hurricane Ridge and Olympic National Park. And it was like this kind of just odd idea of like, let's take contemporary music, chamber music, and let's go play it outside. And we're going to hike up with all of our stuff, and we're going to do like a field recording of this new piece, not in a concert hall, like out here, and people are just going to wander by us on their hike. And that was kind of the idea. So I have over the years like a lot of memories of like really special moments of like playing new music and chamber music, which are two things that I love, in national parks, which is like another thing that I grew up going to national parks, and I love parks and hiking and all that. So this like weird mishmash of like what we normally think of as this kind of music you would hear in a concert hall, or like a fancy art space or some kind of art space in a city or something, it's like totally a different context. People don't always, like I said, know that we're coming. Sometimes we have an event like at a visitor center where they know that there's going to be music, but even that, they don't usually anticipate it's going to be the kind of music it is, because we're playing new music, and pretty much everything we play is written for us because it's a unique instrumentation. So because of that, it just ends up being like this really cool moment of sharing music that just would never happen otherwise. And people are surprised by us and we're surprised by them, and
Yeah.
it's like so fun. And we
That's
try
amazing.
to, yeah, and we try to like usually make the concerts somewhat, but there's some opportunity for audience to kind of talk to us. So they're sometimes more informal, as you might think, since we're all out like in the woods.
Yeah.
You know,
Hiking
but
boots on. Do your friends
yeah,
in the group help you? You have a bigger schlep as possible. Then
yeah,
you spread that love around?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not the kind of thing that I could do all of it myself.
Yeah.
I did experiment with like getting like a frame backpack, like a hiking backpack, and just
Yeah.
shoving all of my stuff in there.
Yeah.
And like that works to,
Yeah.
to an extent, but the first tour we did, it was a huge percussion inventory. I was not involved in the project when they first commissioned the pieces and like sent out the list to the composers about
Wow.
what they could, so I think if I'd been involved, I might have said, hey, that's a lot, like
Pare it down a little bit. Yeah.
pare it
Yeah.
down. And over the years, like each commissioning project we've done, it's like, been like a smaller set of things, and it's kind of, it's the percussion set has always kind of morphed a little bit depending on, and some of the projects have been more like remote, and some of them have been more like we could drive a car up to pretty close to where we're going to play, and so it's not too bad to move stuff.
Right.
But yeah, just the like memories of playing to people in those locations. And the first tour we did, the one thing they had said was like no timpani and no like big mallet instruments.
Yeah.
Right, those were like the only guidelines that were given.
It's like a good start, but maybe you gotta go further.
Yeah. Right. But so instead of the mallet instruments, like I think at least 3 of the composers wrote for like desk bells, like little toys.
Sure. Yeah.
And then also a toy piano. So we had a toy piano that we took with us. And one of the questions that somebody asked in the middle of the concert, like people were asking questions like about the music and really detailed things and wanting to know about, our process as an ensemble and like those kinds of questions. And this person like raised her hand and she just was like, is that a toy piano? And we were like, yeah. And she goes, is it a Melissa and Doug toy piano? The company, and it was. It was a Melissa and Doug. And like it was so funny because it was the way you would say like, is that a Stradivarius?
Right.
Is that a Melissa and Doug? And it was like that. I was like looking at it, I was like, yeah,
it is.
Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like I didn't know it could make that sound. And like it was this just a hilarious moment. So we're always laughing about that now. Like,
love that.
Is it a Melissa and Doug? Like it's like the way that percussionists like would nerd out about our gear, but like
sure. Yeah.
But with a toy. And it was, and it's not like she was a musician. It was probably a mom who like and it was so it's just like those kinds of things. That's just really special and fun.
Wow, I want to know more about that group. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I will hike. If you're anywhere in the area, do a show. I'm ready to hike. I'm ready to come. That's like an awesome way to see music.
Yeah, it's fun. It's it's a unique group, but it's fun.
Yeah, no, that sounds too cool. We're gonna be indoors in February. It's not gonna be a hiking show.
Okay, I'll leave the frame.
Leave the frame. You can just carry in your gear. We may even have some of it for you. Maybe bring your cymbal for sure. Everybody who's listening to this, if you're around New York, and actually I think you can stream it too. I should say we'll get that information out there. But come on out February 5th, Roulette. I think it's gonna be a marathon show. So we're starting at 6 p.m. I think it's gonna be like a 6 to 3 or 4 hours of awesome percussion music. We are so grateful you're going to join us, Colleen. We are pumped.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm pumped to go from 2D to 3D. This is going to be exciting.
I know. We're going to do the elbow bump or something. I don't know.
Boom. Absolutely. WHO, elbow bump. I remember that one. Well, awesome. Thanks for taking an hour to chat. It's really, really fun.
Yeah.
And I'll see you soon.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jason.
Right. See you, Colleen.
See ya.